What's your name?
My name is Daohao.
Say it again.
You can call me Dao.
Dao, you're going to have a minute to pitch what you're building, get some feedback. Are you feeling ready?
Ready. Nervous, but ready.
Nervous, ready. Love it.
Go ahead.
What are you building?
I'm building Munch Insights, a restaurant intelligence platform for operators. One of the biggest problems operators face is understanding their inventory, finance, and their sales analytics. So that's why we're building multi-turn agents to do deep analysis and a deep dive on the crucial parts of their business so that they can get automated alerts, report straight into their email, right, to be on top of their cash flow, their inventory, the building blocks of their business. Because I ran a restaurant for a year. We generated $1 million in revenue. We had negative 40,000 in profit. And that's when I realized this is the golden piece. I did not know anything about my finances. I'm working with some of the brightest restaurants groups in New York to create this workflow. And we're looking to make every operator a pro.
Under a minute. Good job.
Just to clarify, operator means restaurant.
Managers, owners, people who operate the restaurant.
I'm a little bit, by the way, I like the vulnerability of sharing that story. And I think it was a good moment. The crowd even reacted to that moment. So kudos on that. I think even when you are talking to venture investors, they're really going to prize not only you saying, hey, I come from this space or I have experience in this space, but here's where I realized this pain point. Yeah, it's really great. I'm a little bit uncertain on this because I guess I wonder what was hard and what led to that. And maybe I'm going to lead us down some questions that I won't do yet. Any overall reaction before I get into it?
I have a reaction, right? So basically, I think this is a good example of taking a larger space and attacking a small part of it. And there are two larger spaces that you intersected correctly. One is like restaurant tools and one is business intelligence tools, right? So because I've seen a lot of startups that try to do, here's insights into your business, right? So here insights into your finance, but you look at specifically for restaurants, and this is good because from that perspective, hopefully you can beat all the competitors that are not restaurant specific, right? And of course, from specific concept of restaurant tool, this could be like in addition to other tools they're already using and not competing with other tools. So that part is really, really good. I like it. One thing that I'm missing though, obviously, again, is vision. Okay, you're building a small tool for a small market. You explain what's your beachhead market, but what's next? Like in 10 years from now, it's still the same thing that helps $1 million revenue to like fix their cash flow. Hopefully not, right? So because again, for VC to invest, VCs don't want to invest in a tool that helps somebody save some money now. VCs want to invest in something that will become like Apple or Google later, right?
Or Square in this case.
Or Square in this case, right? So yeah.
And this leads me to my question, I guess. So, one of the things that I had in my head as context as you went was there are a lot of founders who have pitched restaurant startups on the stage, targeting them in a variety of manners. And I guess all the time I have this question of why is what's going wrong? And therefore, is the way you fix it necessary, required, or something they're going to look for? Especially these are businesses that have operators who have a ton that is going on. They might be coming from different industries. They don't necessarily look for software solutions so let's get into that a little bit. What's going on inside an ideal customer of this first version of it today that you think causes them to look for a solution like this?
So most operators work long hours, as you know it, and long weeks, right? We're talking 60, 70-hour weeks, right? The last thing they want to do is open up a dashboard and run the analytics. That's why a lot of operators, they hate their native dashboards, right? POS systems, right? One thing that's special about us is we're working with the big guys and taking their workflow and we implement it to the smaller restaurants in a way that's digestible. So we have daily, weekly emails.
So let me pause you. It's a good answer from what you're telling me. It's very clear what you're telling me is happening. But what's the pain point? And I'm asking this for...
When would they decide to sign up?
Is it correct? Even search for it in the first place.
For it, right?
When do they decide, I need something to solve this?
Looking at your finances is the least favorite thing of most business owners.
Let me actually say why I'm looking for this. And this is, kind of something that maybe you don't have the perfect answer to and you can find over time. I remember there's a founder friend of mine who has a very interesting second startup he's working on right now. But the first startup he ever worked on, this is a meta engineering leader who's on a second project. The first one of the challenges, it was kind of business intelligence with AI for physical retail at a certain market segment. And one of the things when he first told me about the concept that I worried about is I said, this feels like it's number 17 on the list for these people. You're telling me they don't open up their dashboard today. And for him, it was about cart optimization and something to do with like optimizing commerce. But I was like, why would the business owner not do it today? And he said, well, it's hard. And that's the last thing they want to do. They have long hours. They're not used to software. And I go, well, maybe then it's always going to be number 17 on the list. And even, we always think as employees or as vendors, well, won't they want to solve a problem? If they have the problem, it's still on the list, it's number 17. But number 17 might always never be above the threshold or above the line, right?
It's like kind of vitamin versus painkiller question.
Yes, exactly. And so, because there's always those other things they have to deal with. So when I ask for that, the good, and you might have it again now, or you might need to find this. I don't know how early you are, but I think the answer sounds something like, they must, at this point, face this challenge, smacks them in the face, makes them feel such a way that they look for this solution.
Search is a really good point because, like, for example, we invested in a food safety software.
Right.
And where they get their customers from Google,
right.
Because the restaurant owner is like, oh my God, I have an inspector on my back.
Yeah.
I need to Google, safety certification thing.
The intent pops up
because they have to, because they have an inspector, right? So it's like, So what query in Google they would have to do this?
It's a great way to put it.
I have a perfect answer. It's when you run your first P&L statement and the number looks different than what's in your head.
Oh, okay. That's pretty good, actually.
Okay.
And is it usually different from what you have in your head because they're not keeping track? It's all these are soft, right? It's not keeping track. It's just like a startup.
They're looking for accountant, maybe.
Yeah.
Are you replacing an accountant?
Usually, what restaurant groups do is they hire fractional CFOs.
Okay,
right?
So they look for CFO, right?
They look for CFOs, right, to come in, fix the whole workflow, right? And then redo things from scratch. That's usually how it happens.
Okay, so then what?
So you're a replacement for CFO. That's a good.
Is that the product?
Yes.
Maybe that's the way to pitch it. Right?
It's a much better way to pitch it. And I think this goes to a lot of like the startup accounting firms.
Munch Insights, right? We are a CFO for the restaurant.
But I guess that's the question I have for you: is that end to end what the product is? Because being a CFO would imply a lot of different outputs that you might not be getting to. So what is it? Is it released today? Is it usable? Not yet.
Not yet.
How many months in or years?
We're 2 years into this idea, 4 months. We're working with a franchise restaurant right now.
So talk about the user experience once you launch this beta. What does it feel like to use? What's the little bit of end-to-end? Don't go into too much detail, but at the overall.
Mm-hmm. So we connect to all of their existing pipelines, whether that's QuickBook, Margin Edge, they use that for inventory, right? Or they can use one of our pipelines, right? We organize all of the data, we configure reports that they will find useful, and we set evaluations, right? Using multi-turn agents. So then we will alert them if something goes wrong preemptively. So they don't get a statement end of the year, try to fix everything last minute.
Okay, what's your thought is like, what's the next step, right? So like, back to my feedback, CFO for restaurants, let's say, what's the next step? Which way you want to expand or?
Product development wise, yeah.
Yeah.
Or vision wise.
So I'm actually a head of product at a bank, right? So one of my long-term vision is I want to make this into the ramp for restaurants.
Okay.
Right. Short term.
Like finance for restaurants. Okay, good.
Right. Short term, right? What I'm looking to do is own these individual pipelines and extend it, right? Because right now a restaurant owner has to buy a Margin Edge $300 per month for inventory, right? They have to buy something else, maybe ADP for payroll, right? But now we are entering a market where a lot of these services are commoditized.
Why does it exist as fragmented and underutilized as it does today?
Mm-hmm.
Is your response to that just because the restaurant owners, operators are just that busy?
I think technology hasn't caught up until recently. I'll give you payroll, for example. Right now, if you wanted to create a payroll software, you go to checkhq.com, right? It's a plug and play 4 weeks implementation. A couple years back, you had to do it by yourself.
But that's good for you, not for them.
Yes.
So I guess like what's stopping them today from having sought these tools and implemented technology in their businesses?
A lot of restaurant owners, right, when they get to the 2-3 location stage, they want to scale, they actually sought after these tools individually.
So there's an interesting thing that you just brought up. I'm going to give one more other startup anecdote here because I think it gets to like what I want for you, and I want you to find something like this. So there's, have you heard of a startup called Bonside?
No.
So Bonside is this really interesting startup. It's raised a couple $1 million and really interesting founder. And what she's built is alternative financing for brick and mortar businesses. And the whole idea is, as you were mentioning, there are maybe 1, 2, 3 locations. They're looking to expand to their next several. And the way that it works is, let's say a yoga studio or a matcha shop then has to submit a bunch of financials that they then have to normalize and standardize and kind of clean up the books so that Bonside can underwrite them for a deal. And then they decide whether to do the deal or not. If they do the deal, they continue to work with them and kind of move forward, help them expand in more locations, or they decide not to do the deal. But what was really interesting to me when I was chatting with her, I chatted with her for another show that we do, was the realization at some point when I said, hey, I asked the vision question. I was like, okay, what happens next? And she goes, well, understand something about what we're doing. Because I thought of it as like an alternative financing thing, and it is partly. But part of what she said is, we're normalizing these businesses. They have terrible books. The operators have not had time to think about any of this. They don't understand their opportunities in revenue and in margin. They don't understand their expansion opportunities. But we've now, as part of the process of getting them to apply for a bond side investment, have again, normalized their business in a big way, cleaned up their books and cleaned up the way they operate. In other words, they put an incentive on the other side of the behavior. And my concern for you is, like, as a SaaS product, you have the tool that allows them to get to the behavior, but still no incentive other than...
There are two potential expansions, and I don't know if you thought about it. One is alternative financing, exactly, that after you do this, you can yourself underwrite, give them money, or...
Which like Stripe and Stripe does for sure, right? So it's similar kind of financial operating system, and they'll look at your books and go, here's, they have the Stripe Capital offering loans.
Or move into M&A space. I actually looked at a startup that specifically built a marketplace for M&A of brick and mortar, right? So it's like, I want to buy a restaurant, right? Where can I find a restaurant to buy? And maybe you have a list of restaurants with all the normalized financials, right?
So now let's bring this to the pitch, and we'll, for the sake of time, have to close. But this is like where I think it's really interesting. We go back to tell the same story from a product perspective, share your same personal anecdote, add the concept of what we enable is restaurants to do X. In other words, they'll come to us for SaaS and for tooling and normalization, but understand what a restaurant looks like after they do this behavior appropriately. Restaurants can expand, they can pay their workers more, they can operate longer hours, they can do delivery more efficiently, they can engage in M&A. And you don't need to, as a startup, you can decide eventually over time which of these things do you literally want to do? Like, do you want to offer them loans or not is a thing you can't do. But the point that you'll make to investors, since you're still very early, is the vision point that you guys were really pointing on of, our vision is not only to help these restaurants get to the stage, but to be there on the other side with them too. When they have these better finances, these better operating procedures, when they understand their numbers differently, not only have we solved that problem for them, but it's opened up a whole other set of activities.
Funny, yeah. It's like come for X, stay for that. Square is exactly like that. Or Stripe.
Yeah.
Stripe. Come for credit card acquisition, but stay for the fact that Stripe starts giving you loans.
Exactly.
And a lot of these businesses now are like on evergreen Stripe loan. They cannot leave because they so.
As again, you don't have to pick necessarily these things, but knowing them and talking about them as part of the pitch allows an investor to go, oh, I can imagine that.
Before we finish, I really want to talk about the GTM. One thing why a lot of investors don't like small like brick and mortar or restaurant businesses, because it's really, really hard to get any operator that's busy like their hands in oil kind of there to get your software, right? Walking door to door in New York and trying to sell your software is like terrible. What's your approach there?
We're planning to partner up with accountants, right? CFOs and consultant groups, right? We're going to offer them royalties. Right. Usually when they come in, right, if we tell the consulting groups, right, or these guys coming in to fix the restaurant, you can get a potential forever retention.
To them?
Not necessarily. I think in the beginning we're in partnership, right? Okay. We're working with them to plug in the systems, right? So it makes their life easier, because a lot of times these systems they're implementing, it's on Excel sheet. Right. What if it lives on the dashboard and it's emailed?
So it's a good answer, but it's complicated because I'm sure the same thing's happening in both our heads. You're kind of competing with them. And then probably the second thing, I don't know if it was exactly in your head, was, okay, but then shouldn't you sell to them if what you said is true, that you're making their life easier? Now, I'm like in this mix.
So you said you started with franchises a little bit, but look into franchises of mid-size, maybe not go to like McDonald's, but franchises that have like 1,000 locations and try to get through corporate to suggest to
this is an interesting channel. Yes, wait, I like this better than the account because there's an overall incentive. I love this actually. The corporate entity that provides the franchise to all the franchisees has the best incentive to
force them to
because
good
then
books.
They get better royalties from all their franchisees, and they get to show potential new franchisees the operating system.
They can actually start from you, franchise, because it's often easier to implement this from the very, very start. And then when somebody is buying the franchise, they can buy the franchise with your software right away, right? So if you agree with the corporate.
That's a good idea.
It's easier to implement it.
There's a lot we're excited about. So you've got a lot to work with, and it's exciting. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. I'm curious, if we linger on that one for a little bit, the thing that is hardest, to your point, is go to market. Even if you have a good idea like the franchisee portion. Mostly because, again, that operator has so much they're going to be doing. When do they decide to search? When do they decide to buy? When do they decide to implement? When someone's this early, do you need a good answer? Do you need just a theory that's the experiment that you're funding? Like, how much do you look for a completed answer?
So I can say how we operate, and I know that a lot of venture funds do it differently. For us, there's basically a framework, depends on the experience of the founder. If the founder comes to us with a very clear experience from their previous job or previous startup where they sold to kind of exactly the same people, like for example, if this founder told us that in their previous job, they sold to franchise corporates and they have like 200 of them, something else, right? So they now have their Rolodex and they know how to sell to them, what their pain points are. I will invest like at the next stage.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If this founder says, okay, I never sold to this kind of customers, but I was like, okay, show me the interviews, homework that you spoke with 100 customers, you have LOIs, or even better, most likely we will actually wait for revenue. We will actually wait for revenue and we'll see how are they able to grow this revenue. And for us, we don't necessarily require 200, maybe, but like 200, 300K. For AI products, there's now big question of quality of revenue. Is it like from innovation budget? But that's for big corporates, right? For restaurants, isn't it? But yeah, this is basically our framework. Experience, one bucket, then a lot of customer interviews, second bucket, and the actual revenue, third bucket. Yes.
That's a good answer because I think, again, if you're at the pre-seed, you have to deal with that often. You can't always get the reliable signal or the good go-to-market answer, but you do need it's evidence. It's different versions of evidence.
Yeah. And for first-time founders, it's still possible to build, with no experience, it's still possible to find VCs or incubators or accelerators to write you first $500,000 or something, or maybe even the first $1 million before you have any revenue, and then get to revenue. Yeah.
Accelerators in this day and age are going to become popular again.